I never planned to hold another woman's hand that night. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't some secret plot to make her cry or to win, whatever this had turned into. It was just instinct. Warmth. After months of living like wallpaper, I reached for someone who actually looked at me like I was there. And somehow, that simple gesture, a hand in mine, shattered everything she thought she had control over. Let me rewind a bit. We had guests over. Not many. Just a small get-together for her coworker's birthday. Our house had become a showroom by then, perfectly arranged, emotionally empty. I was in charge of drinks and setting up the playlist, which she changed halfway through because my taste was too depressing. I noticed her pouring wine too generously for everyone but me. She laughed at someone's joke about marriage being a long yawn before death. I caught her eyes for a second. She looked through me. Like I wasn't even part of her life anymore, just part of the furniture she hadn't replaced yet. Then, around 9:20 p.m., she said it. Loud. Clear. Everyone heard. I don't love you anymore, Emery. Can we stop pretending? No music playing. No background chatter to drown her out. Just her voice, slicing through the air like a box cutter. One of the guests awkwardly coughed. Another sipped their wine too fast and choked. I stood frozen with a half-filled soda can in my hand like a malfunctioning vending machine. Celeste, what are you? I started. She rolled her eyes. There it is. That pathetic little voice you use when you're about to beg for scraps. Don't. No one said a word. Not even her friend Nina, who had invited herself over more times than I could count. Everyone just stared at me. At the man who'd just been publicly dumped in his own kitchen. I nodded. Said nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't plead like I always did when she disappeared emotionally. Something just broke loose inside me. Like the air had shifted. Like gravity had lightened. I walked past her. Quietly. To the front porch. That's where Ava was. She wasn't invited. She had dropped by to return a book I lent her, one of the neighborhood moms I talked to sometimes during my evening walks. Her son went to the same school I worked at. She was about to leave when she heard the shouting from inside and froze at the steps. And for the first time in years, someone looked at me, not through me, not around me, but directly into me. I didn't think. I just reached out. She took my hand. And right then, Celeste walked to the door. She saw us. And for someone who just told me she didn't love me anymore, her face fell apart like a crumbling wall. She didn't speak. Didn't scream. She just stood there, arms slack, mouth open, mascara already beginning to streak. That moment. That was the moment I realized. She never expected to lose me. She didn't move. Celeste stood there in the doorway like time had frozen her body mid-step. Her mouth parted, but no sound came out. I wish I could say I felt triumph, or anger, or even satisfaction. But all I felt was stillness. Like I'd been holding my breath for the past 5 years, and only now, with Ava's hand in mine, did I finally exhale. Ava dropped her gaze, clearly startled. She wasn't part of this war, didn't ask to be in the crossfire. Her hand loosened, but I didn't let go. Not out of defiance. Just to remind myself that I still existed. That my presence still had weight, even if my own wife had turned me invisible long ago. Celeste blinked twice, like maybe the image of us together would disappear if she stared hard enough. Then, like someone hit a switch, her face changed. Her eyes flooded. She pressed her lips tightly together and turned back into the house. Ava looked at me with a mix of guilt and confusion, whispering, "Emery, I didn't mean to." I shook my head. "You didn't do anything wrong." And I meant it. That moment wasn't about Ava. It was about me. For once. It was about the tiny thread of self-worth I'd been slowly sewing back together in private, between therapy sessions I didn't tell anyone about and morning walks I pretended were just for exercise. I walked Ava to her car, gently letting go of her hand once we reached it. She hesitated before getting in, glancing toward the house like it was a live grenade. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked, quietly. I gave her the most honest answer I could, "I don't know." She nodded and drove off without another word. The silence left in her wake felt heavier than any goodbye. When I stepped back inside, Celeste was sitting on the stairs, face in her hands. Her friends had cleared out. The house was eerily quiet, except for the sound of one of her high heels tapping rhythmically against the hardwood, nervous, mindless, frantic. I walked past her. I didn't want to talk. Not yet. I needed air. Distance. But she grabbed my wrist. "You're not really going to throw everything away because I lost it for a minute, are you?" I turned around slowly. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't towering over me with disdain. She looked small. Shaken. "I didn't throw anything away," I said. "You did. The night you decided I wasn't enough and didn't even bother to say it until it could hurt the most." "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" My voice broke without warning. "Was it supposed to be a performance? You called me pathetic in front of a room full of people. And now I'm the one who crossed the line because I held someone's hand." She stood, brushing past me toward the kitchen. "You don't get it." "No, I think I finally do," I said, louder than I intended. "You didn't stop loving me. You just stopped needing me. And you didn't know how to admit it without trying to make it my fault." Celeste turned back around with trembling lips and said something I'll never forget. "I thought you'd always stay, no matter how badly I treated you." The honesty in her voice was almost more painful than the betrayal. That night, I didn't sleep in our bedroom. I didn't even sleep on the couch. I went back to the porch with a blanket and stared into the dark for hours. My mind wasn't racing. It wasn't chaotic. It was quiet. Which was scarier, honestly. Because that silence felt permanent. It felt like the part of me that used to love her had finally stepped out into the cold and didn't plan on coming back inside. But what really shocked me was what I found the next morning, tucked into her purse. It changed everything. I wasn't looking for anything. Honestly, I was just trying to clear my head. After everything that happened the night before, sleep had become some mythical concept my body no longer understood. The porch floor had bruised my spine, the sunrise felt like a personal insult, and every breath I took made me feel like I was dragging myself through wet concrete. I shuffled into the kitchen with a dull throb behind my eyes and decided to at least make some coffee. That's when I noticed her purse, still hanging off the back of the kitchen chair, half unzipped, sagging open like a tired secret. I don't know why I peeked. Maybe because I hadn't been able to stop thinking about the way she looked at me when she saw me holding Ava's hand. The disbelief. The panic. The wet shock in her eyes. It was too much for just a bruised ego. There was something more underneath. Something deeper. Darker. Inside her purse was the usual chaos: lip balm, sunglasses, loose change, her ever-present peppermint gum, but wedged beneath her wallet was a small white envelope, unmarked and sealed. I pulled it out carefully. No name, no return address. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It wasn't from anyone. It was just there. Waiting. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. The contents? A folded printed page. A receipt. A hotel booking. 2 nights. Out of town. The date was exactly a week from today. Reservation made under her maiden name. 1 guest. I felt the blood drain from my hands. My first thought, of course, was that she was planning to leave. Maybe she already had. Maybe last night was supposed to be the break. The grand exit. The collapse of our entire life, timed around some hotel check-in. But it didn't make sense. Why the secrecy? Why the envelope? Why had she kept it hidden, but not destroyed? And then I flipped the receipt over. There was handwriting on the back. Her handwriting. Sloppy, like it had been scribbled in haste. 3 lines. Just 3. Emery will never change. I want to feel something again. One last weekend of being seen. My knees buckled. I actually had to sit down. The paper trembled in my hands like it carried heat. I couldn't stop staring at the last line, one last weekend of being seen. Like I was some fog she'd been drifting through. Like our marriage had become a glass wall she pressed her palms against, screaming behind, unheard. I wanted to be angry. I should have been furious. But all I felt was this horrible cocktail of shame and confusion and guilt. Was I that blind? Was I so busy trying to be supportive and gentle that I'd somehow erased every trace of desire, of fire, of humanity in our relationship? I pressed the paper against my chest and leaned forward, forehead on the table, trying not to collapse into sobs. But they came anyway, quiet, stifled ones. The kind that choke you without warning. About an hour later, I heard her coming down the stairs. Barefoot. Hesitant. I didn't move. I stayed seated, back to the entryway, holding the envelope like it had answers I wasn't ready to hear. She saw it the second she stepped into the room. Her breath caught. I didn't even need to look at her to know the expression she wore. Guilt. Maybe even fear. You went through my purse, she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I found something I wasn't meant to, I said. That's different. She didn't answer. I finally turned to face her. Were you going to tell me? Or just disappear for 2 days and come back like nothing happened? She looked at the ground. I wasn't sure. That hotel, was it for you, or for you and someone else? She flinched. Just me. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. But there was a part of me, the part that still remembered her smile from 3 years ago, back when she used to reach for my hand first, that whispered, she's already gone, Emery. She just hasn't left the house yet. She walked toward me, slowly, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed. I didn't plan last night. I wasn't trying to hurt you like that. It just came out. I shook my head. You humiliated me. Then you collapsed when you saw someone else treating me like I mattered. And now there's this. She sat across from me, her knees brushing the table. I felt invisible, Emery. I don't know how to explain it. I nearly laughed. You. Invisible? You've been the center of every room we've walked into since we were 30. To them, maybe. But not to you. Her eyes narrowed. You treat me like a fragile vase. You never argue. You never want anything. I needed passion, and all I got was politeness. I stood up slowly, folding the envelope in half. Then maybe you should have asked for a man, not a doormat. I walked out again. Not out of rage. Not even out of sadness. I walked out because the truth stung in a new way this time. I realized I'd been loving her quietly, and she needed someone who shouted. And the worst part? She never once asked me if I was okay being quiet. I didn't leave the house entirely. I walked down the block, wandered past the same yards I'd mowed 100 times, the cracked sidewalk I used to shovel in the winters, past Mr. Kavanaugh's overgrown bushes and the green mailbox Celeste and I had painted together back when we thought doing things like that meant something. My feet moved out of habit, not purpose. I wasn't going anywhere. I just couldn't be there, in that kitchen, in that air, with her silence trying to rewrite everything I thought I knew. When I finally returned, it was almost dusk. The house was dim. No lights on. No sounds. For a second, I wondered if she had left. If she had taken that envelope and gone early. But the moment I opened the front door, I heard it, the faint rustle of movement upstairs. She hadn't left. She was just waiting. For me to come back. For me to talk. I didn't want a conversation. I didn't want a fight. I just wanted clarity, something solid I could wrap my hands around, even if it hurt. When I reached the top of the stairs, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed. The same bed we hadn't shared in 2 weeks. She was holding one of my sweatshirts. Not wearing it. Just, holding it. That small detail struck something in me. I don't know why. Maybe because it was mine. And it looked like she missed something. Or someone. But I didn't let it soften me. You didn't go, I said quietly. She shook her head, still looking down. No. Not yet. Are you planning to? Another pause. I don't know. I walked over to the dresser and leaned against it, arms crossed. You wrote those words, Celeste. You wrote about needing to feel seen. About how I'd never change. So tell me, was this hotel supposed to be a break? A reset? Or were you going to walk out of that room and never come back? She looked up slowly. Her eyes were glassy. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that. I raised my eyebrows. That's not good enough. She stood, placing the sweatshirt on the bed like it was fragile. I was angry, Emery. Not at you. At me. At everything. I was tired of feeling like I was slowly disappearing. I wanted to remember who I used to be. By checking into a hotel and leaving your marriage in the drawer with the room key. I wasn't going to cheat on you, if that's what you're accusing me of. I sighed. Celeste, the betrayal isn't in what you didn't do. It's in the fact that you planned to vanish. That you needed space from the person you promised to grow old with, and you couldn't even say it to my face. I didn't think you'd hear me. She stepped closer. You never get angry. You never push back. You just, absorb. You act like a sponge for my moods and then call it love. My chest tightened. So you wanted me to yell? To slam doors? I wanted something real, Emery. Something raw. That cut deeper than she probably intended. Because to her, my quiet was weakness. But to me, it was survival. I didn't scream because I was afraid that once I started, I wouldn't stop. That I'd become something I hated. So I learned to breathe through it. To fold my anger into smaller shapes. To protect her from my storms. But maybe she wanted the storm. Maybe she needed to know she could still shake me. Well, I said, backing away, congratulations. You found the crack. She looked startled. That's not what I meant. I held up my hand. Don't explain. You had months to explain, and you waited until your guilt outweighed your secrecy. That's not communication. That's cleanup. Her lip quivered, and for a moment, I thought she might scream or throw something or finally say something real. But instead, she just sank down to the edge of the bed again and covered her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. It was the worst part of all. Because the apology didn't feel like remorse. It felt like a technicality. Like a return policy being exercised too late. I turned away, pacing to the window. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The world kept turning. Somewhere down the road, Ava was probably putting her son to bed, maybe reading him something warm and safe. Meanwhile, I stood here in the ruins of my marriage, listening to the hollow sound of my wife saying sorry because she didn't know what else to do. I need to leave, I said. She looked up sharply. What? Not forever. Not tonight. But soon. I can't live in this half-space anymore, Celeste. You want someone loud. I want someone kind. We're both still here out of habit, not hope. She started to cry, really cry this time. She tried to reach for me, but I took a step back. I don't hate you, I added gently. But I don't trust the way you handled this. And I can't love someone who makes me feel like an accessory to their identity crisis. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not on the couch. Not on the porch. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere in between goodbye and not yet. But the real shift happened the next morning, when I saw the envelope again, this time torn in half, and something new stuffed inside. And what I read. It made everything unravel faster than I was prepared for. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I noticed was the light, too bright, too clean. It filtered through the thin curtains in the guest room like it was trying to disinfect the entire house. My body ached. Not from the mattress, which was surprisingly decent, but from something more hollow, like I had been scooped out during the night and only the skin was left behind. I sat up slowly, trying to remember if anything had been said after I left her room the night before. But no. Just silence. The kind of silence you feel in your teeth. I didn't expect a note under the door or a knock on the wall, but some small gesture would have been something. Instead, there was only the muted hum of a house holding its breath. When I walked out into the hallway, the bedroom door was open. I peeked in. She wasn't there. The bed was neatly made, the sweatshirt gone. At first, I thought she might have gone out for coffee or a walk. But then I noticed something strange on the kitchen table, something that didn't belong. The envelope was back. But it was torn, clean down the middle and then taped together again, as if it had been opened in anger, then reassembled with guilt. Inside was a new piece of paper, folded in half. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. But not like she usually wrote it. Not rushed or careless. No, this was precise. Deliberate. Almost ceremonial. I opened it with the same dread I'd felt the first time. But this was something different. It was a letter. A real one. Not a receipt. Not a scribbled note. A full letter. 2 pages. It read. Emery. If you're reading this, it means you found the original envelope and now you think you know everything. But you don't. And I'm not writing this to save face, I'm writing it because there's a truth I never had the courage to tell you. For the past year, I've been going to a support group. Not for grief. Not for addiction. For resentment. For women who feel like they became invisible inside their marriages. I didn't go to cheat. I didn't go to gossip. I went to understand why I felt like I was evaporating in plain sight. I didn't hate you, Emery. I envied you. You were always so composed. So patient. So steady. And I was not. I needed chaos. I needed friction. And I blamed you for not giving me something I couldn't even name. That hotel booking was supposed to be a test. Not of you, of me. Could I spend 48 hours with no one needing me? Would I miss you? Would I regret walking away? I didn't plan to sleep with anyone. But I did plan to imagine what it would feel like to never come back. Last night, when I saw you holding her hand, I realized something that tore through me. I had been starving for connection, but the moment someone else gave it to you, I panicked. Not because I was losing you, but because I thought you'd never be the one to let go first. You did. And now I'm terrified that I mistook your gentleness for weakness and your silence for apathy. Maybe I've been wrong. Maybe I've been cruel in ways I can't even apologize for. I don't know what I want, Emery. But I know I don't want you to leave thinking this was ever easy for me. I broke something sacred. And I don't know if it can be rebuilt. The letter ended there. No signature. No love, Celeste. Just silence in ink form. I stood over the table, the paper shaking in my hands. She had gone to a resentment support group, like it was something you needed to detox from. Like loving me required recovery. I didn't know whether to be offended or heartbroken. So I stood there, clutching that paper like it might explain what kind of man I really was. That's when I heard the sound of keys jingling. She stepped in through the front door carrying a small grocery bag. Her eyes widened when she saw me holding the letter. "You read it," she said, almost like it was a question. I did. She didn't move. Just stayed frozen near the door. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "And what? You wrote a poetic eulogy to our marriage and expected me to hand you closure?" But I didn't. Instead, I walked up to her, slowly, and asked, "Why did you tape the envelope back together?" She blinked. I panicked. After I tore it, I thought maybe it should be whole when you found it. Even if it's already too late. That answer hit me in a place I didn't know was still breakable. Because that's what we'd become, hadn't we? A torn-up thing trying to pass for whole. Held together by tape and apologies and too many chances. "You know," I said, stepping back, "it's almost cruel, how much sense this all suddenly makes." She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "I spent years thinking the quiet was safety. But it turns out it was slow abandonment. From both of us." She lowered her eyes. "I'm going to stay with my brother for a while," I added, finally saying it. "I need space. Not because I hate you. Not because I want to punish you. But because I don't know how to unfeel what I've felt in this house." She opened her mouth to speak, but I stopped her with a hand. "And don't say you understand," I added, voice sharp but calm. "Because if you did, this would have happened a long time ago. And maybe we'd still have something left to fight for." I packed my bag that afternoon. And as I closed the door behind me, I saw her watching from the kitchen window. This time, she didn't cry. She just looked like a woman staring at something she never expected to lose. I wish I could tell you that leaving the house felt empowering. That I marched out with my head high, dignity intact, like the end of a melodramatic movie where the underdog finally grows a spine and walks into the sunset. But it wasn't like that at all. It was slow. Heavy. I drove to my brother's place with a lump in my throat that wouldn't dissolve no matter how many times I swallowed. The car was quiet except for the faint whir of the air conditioner. No music. No GPS. Just me and the feeling that I was watching my life shrink in the rearview mirror, frame by frame. Jasper, my younger brother by 4 years, lived alone in a 2-bedroom apartment over a florist shop. It always smelled like eucalyptus and coffee grounds. He didn't ask too many questions when I arrived, just opened the door, gave me a tired look, and said, "Guest room's clean. Bathrooms to the left. There's leftover pizza if you want it." I didn't. But I thanked him anyway. For the first couple of days, I barely spoke. I sat on the tiny balcony with a mug of black tea and stared out at the alleyway behind the building. Occasionally, I'd watch the florist below arrange bouquets through the glass, wrapping them in brown paper, tying them with twine. Something about the simplicity of it made me feel ridiculous, like how absurd it was that a bundle of flowers could be put together with more care than the life I'd tried to build with Celeste. Jasper tried to give me space. But on the third night, as we were both sitting in silence watching a rerun of a show neither of us cared about, he finally asked, "So? You and Celeste? Is it final?" I stared at the TV for a while before answering. "I don't think she knows what she wants. And I'm just now realizing I haven't known either." He nodded. Didn't push. Didn't make it about him. Just sat there in the quiet with me, the way you do when someone's grieving something you can't name. But the silence didn't last long. 2 mornings later, I woke up to a voicemail from Celeste. I didn't listen to it right away. I let it sit there like a threat in my notifications while I brewed coffee and tried to remember how mornings used to feel when I wasn't waking up with someone else's pain shoved into my chest. Eventually, curiosity, or maybe guilt, won out. I pressed play. Her voice came through immediately, shaky and too fast, like she'd recorded it while pacing. Emery, I'm not going to beg you to come back. I know that's not fair to either of us right now. But I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else. I saw Ava. She came by the house yesterday. I froze. She said she didn't know how else to reach you. That you've been distant with her too. I guess she saw me watching the two of you that night. She apologized. I leaned against the counter, the ceramic of the coffee mug burning in my hand. She told me she didn't mean to step into anything. That she didn't know what was happening between us. And Emery, she cried. She cried when she talked about you. Said you looked like someone who hadn't been seen in years. There was a pause. A shallow breath. And for what it's worth, I think she's right. The voicemail ended abruptly. No goodbye. No request to call back. I stared at my phone, pulse racing. I hadn't spoken to Ava since that night. I'd thought about it, reaching out, thanking her, explaining myself, but shame kept me silent. Because deep down, I knew what that handhold had meant. It wasn't just comfort. It wasn't just a reaction. It was the first honest connection I'd had in months. Maybe longer. Later that day, I found the courage to text her. Just a short message. Hey. I'm sorry I vanished. Can we talk? She responded almost instantly. Yes. Please. We met at a public park just before dusk. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench near the pond, hair tied back, sunglasses perched on her head. She looked tired, but not angry. When she saw me, she stood up, then hesitated, unsure whether to hug me or not. I nodded gently. It's okay. She stepped forward and hugged me. Brief, soft, but grounding. We sat. And for the next 40 minutes, we talked about everything but Celeste. About our jobs. About her son's obsession with dinosaurs. About how the world felt like it had shifted slightly on its axis lately, and no one could quite stand upright. Finally, she turned to me and said, I didn't mean to get in the middle of your marriage. I didn't even know I was in the middle until it was already too late. You weren't, I said honestly. You didn't pull me out of anything. I was already halfway gone. She looked at me for a long moment. Are you still in love with her? The question hit like a blunt object. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I did. I'm in love with who I thought she was, I said. But the version of her that's still in that house. I don't think I know that person anymore. Ava nodded slowly. So what now? I didn't have a good answer. But before I could attempt one, my phone buzzed again. Another message. From Jasper this time. You need to get back here. Something happened. I stood up, heart racing. Ava stood too, eyes wide. Is everything okay? I don't know, I muttered. But I think my life just got messy. Because waiting back at that apartment, was the fallout I hadn't seen coming. And it had Celeste's name all over it. When I got back to Jasper's apartment, the front door was ajar. That was the first red flag. The second was the silence. Jasper always kept some kind of sound going, TV, music, even those ambient YouTube fireplace loops. But the air inside felt vacuum-sealed. Still. Loaded. I pushed the door open slowly. Jazz? No answer. I stepped inside and scanned the room. Everything looked untouched, except for one thing. On the kitchen table sat an open manila envelope, and beside it, a wine glass, still half full. Celeste's perfume lingered in the air. I stared at the envelope for a beat too long before finally walking over. Inside were three things: a folded legal-sized document, a small flash drive, and a single Polaroid photo. I pulled the document out first. It was a printed letter from her lawyer. A formal draft of a separation agreement. No signatures yet. Just a blank line under each of our names. But hers had already been underlined in pen. Beneath that was a list of jointly owned assets. The house. 2 bank accounts. Retirement savings. Her offer was highlighted. It was generous. Too generous. I opened the Polaroid next. It was an old picture, must have been from 6 or 7 years ago. The two of us were on a beach in South Carolina. My arm around her, sand on our feet, that rare kind of smile on both our faces that cameras usually miss. It wasn't posed. Just, captured. On the back of the photo, she had written one sentence in fine, looping script. You never deserved what I became. I didn't know whether to scream or sit down and sob. Instead, I picked up the flash drive. For a moment, I considered throwing it away. Whatever she wanted me to see, it could wait. But curiosity won again. I plugged it into Jasper's laptop and opened the only file inside. A video. 5 minutes, 47 seconds. It started with static. Then the image steadied, Celeste, seated on the edge of our bed, wearing a gray sweater I hadn't seen in years. Hi, she said, her voice small. If you're watching this, it means I finally figured out how to let go. I froze. She looked down at her hands before continuing. I've been trying to fix something without admitting I broke it. And I don't mean we broke it, I mean me. You kept waiting for me to reach back, and all I did was drift further. She blinked rapidly, then laughed once, dry, humorless. There's no grand excuse. I didn't cheat on you. I didn't fall in love with someone else. I just stopped believing I mattered to myself. And instead of telling you that, I punished you for not guessing it. She inhaled sharply, then wiped her cheek. That day you held Ava's hand. It wasn't the betrayal. It was the clarity. I saw in your face something I hadn't seen in months. You looked alive. Like someone who had hope again. And it made me realize I'd been starving you of that without even noticing. Another pause. I can't undo what I've said. Or what I planned. But I can stop making it worse. So here's the truth, I'm letting you go. You don't need my permission. But I wanted to give it anyway. Because you deserve peace, Emery. And I think I've become the loudest noise in your life. The screen cut to black. No goodbye. No plea. Just darkness. I sat back in the chair, letting everything sink in. The legal letter. The photograph. The video. Celeste wasn't trying to fight anymore. This wasn't a manipulation. This wasn't one of her layered emotional games. This was the end. And for the first time since I left that house, I felt the shape of real grief press against my lungs. She had finally done the thing I couldn't bring myself to do. She let go. But the strangest part wasn't the pain. It was the faintest flicker of relief burning at the edge of it. Because I knew, somewhere deep in the bone, that the version of me who had stayed through everything, he was gone. And someone new was waiting to be built from what remained. That night, I didn't go to sleep. I walked out onto the balcony with the Polaroid in my hand and watched the city breathe. And I didn't know it yet, but the next morning would bring a message I never expected. Not from Celeste. Not from Ava. But from someone else entirely. And it would change everything again. The message came just after sunrise. I had barely slept, again. My phone buzzed while I sat on the edge of Jasper's couch with that Polaroid still tucked in my palm like a relic. I didn't recognize the number. No name. No preview of the text. Just a message, waiting. For some reason, I opened it immediately. I think you deserve to be told in person. Coffee. Below it was a name I hadn't seen in months. Harper. She was Celeste's cousin. Someone who used to come to family dinners, birthdays, holidays, before she stopped. I always assumed it was distance, schedules, the usual drift. But now I wasn't so sure. I replied with a simple, "Where?" 10 minutes later, she sent an address to a small cafe near the botanical gardens. A place Celeste used to drag me to when we first moved in together. I'd forgotten it existed. I arrived an hour later. Harper was already there, tall, confident, dressed like someone who made peace with herself years ago. She stood when she saw me and gave a small nod, not a hug, just acknowledgement. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat. I half smiled. "You said you had something to tell me?" She took a breath and got straight to it. "I know Celeste sent you that letter. The video. The separation papers." I nodded. "Yeah. She asked me to be her emergency contact in case she couldn't face you directly." That sat heavy in the air. "I told her I wouldn't play messenger," Harper continued, "but after what I saw this week, I realized you deserved to know the truth." She reached into her bag and pulled out a notebook. Spiral bound. Familiar. "She's been writing to you." 4 months. I blinked. What? She never planned to send them. Just letters. A way to say the things she didn't know how to say out loud. She gave them to me a while back for safekeeping. I think part of her hoped I'd throw them away. But I didn't. Harper slid the notebook across the table. "I'm not giving this to you because I think it changes anything. I'm giving it to you because you deserve the full picture. Whatever you do after that is yours." I opened it cautiously. The first page was dated 8 months ago. "Dear Emery. Today, I watched you fix the hallway light without a word. You thought I didn't notice. But I did. You've always been the quiet glue of this home. And I don't know why that makes me so angry sometimes." I closed it. Tears pushed behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Harper sipped her coffee. "I'm not here to defend her. But I want you to know that even when she got it wrong, she never stopped writing." That line gutted me. Because I spent so long believing I was shouting into silence, and she had been scribbling back in secret. When I got back to Jasper's, I didn't open the notebook again right away. I placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Not to forget it. But to honor it later. On my own time. When I was ready. Instead, I picked up my phone and sent a message. To Ava. Dinner? Not to talk about anything heavy. Just to laugh. Just to feel light for a while. She responded within seconds. Thought you'd never ask. Weeks passed. Then months. Celeste and I finalized the separation quietly. No lawyers needed. No courtroom battles. Just 2 people who finally told the truth. We met once more at the cafe Harper had chosen. We exchanged a few kind words. She gave me one final letter. I haven't opened it yet. Maybe one day I will. Ava and I. We've become soft. Honest. Gentle with each other in ways I didn't know were possible. She never tried to fill the space left behind. She simply sat with me in it. And over time, I started to see something I never expected to feel again: hope. The kind that doesn't roar. The kind that breathes. So here I am now, writing this final entry. Not with bitterness. Not with regret. But with gratitude. Because sometimes, the ending you're dreading is just the beginning you didn't know how to reach. And sometimes, when someone says, "I don't love you anymore," they're really just freeing you to find someone who will. And this time, I'll be ready.